you for joining us. Thank those on the webcast for joining us. I don't know how many we have, but I do appreciate the fact that you're sitting in some comfort listening to us do this presentation. If you're watching, please let us, please be sure that if you have any questions that you send them by email. You would have received the webcast address to send them to, the link. So please do that. We will have question sessions after the first half and then again at the end. So before we get into today's agenda, I would like to ask if there's any one here today that's part of the Tarion Start Right program. Just by show your hands if you're here. If you want to not acknowledge that you're here, just come and let us know during the break that you are here. If you are, we're happy to have you join us. It's part of our spring and fall educational programs that we put together. There's a lot of builders in this room that attend on a regular basis. They recognize the importance of this educational session. So welcome. And this is what the agenda looks like. Right off the bat, we'll get started with a round of warranted or not, very popular part of our presentations. It will be followed by an update on transformation, including what changes have already taken place and what we expect the next steps to be. Then we'll give you an update on what's happening around Tarion. We'll go to a coffee break. When we come back, we'll review the 2018 claims, or what we like to think of what's costing you and Tarion money, and then we'll end with another session of warranted or not. We'll have also in there the warranty workshop. I have a number of people in warranty services and other departments in the room, but when they come up to the podium, I'll let them introduce themselves. And since I didn't introduce myself, my name is Bob Tober and I'm Director of Stakeholder Relations. Warranted or not, the audience participation game. And you know how this works. I'm going to ask, is it warranted or not? I'll give you a little bit of information. I will ask, is it warranted or not? And then by show of hands, I'll ask who thinks it's warranted and who thinks it's not. So this came to us on a second-year form. The homeowner said that they cannot access the water heater. Looks like a furnace to me because of the location of the stacked washer and dryer. So warranted? Not? Let's try that again. There's a lot of in-betweeners. Warranted? Not? It seemed to be more not than for. And it's not warranted. First of all, it was on a second-year form, which covers mainly mechanical electrical distribution when it comes to that type of equipment. And even though it's an inconvenience, that stacked washer and dryer could be moved to provide access. So as much may be a bit of an exercise to do that, but it is accessible. Damage trim at around the baseboard. This is near the entrance to kitchen. I don't know if you can see up there. Maybe we can turn off one of these lights up right in the very front so that, is that better? Is that better? I don't know what that does to, it's okay? We're good? So the homeowner stated this was a condition when they took occupancy of the home. So what do you think? Warranted? Not warranted? Well, so by the way, if you're just going to ask a question, we should give you a mic so that the people on the webcast can hear you. But the question was, when was it reported? I don't need to answer the question because the next slide will kind of give you a little bit more information of how this came about. So that's the culprit. So of course, it wasn't warranted. This one is a gas meter cover that is factory finished, but not painted. The homeowner and the home inspector that had been hired by the homeowner pointed this out and cited CPG Article 9.9 stating the paint finish is incomplete. The builder inquired about their responsibility and indicating the home inspector cited 9.9 regarding this finish. And so, warranted? Not? Well, this is going to surprise you because it was warranted. Although the situation is similar to lintels and the cover is not corroded and the cover is not corroded, the finish is marred and would be viewed as poor work. I know it was a call that it's one of those subjective ones. So you may see one next door may be okay, but I think really when it's all said and done, you got to stand back and ask yourself, was the right thing to do? Should it be painted or not? And if you're going to paint it, then it has to be painted with paint that's going to stand that test of time and paint that's appropriate for a metal finish. In this case, the homeowner experienced significant water penetration, which was warranted. As part of the repair, the masonry had to be removed and reinstalled. When it was repaired, the homeowner felt that the section circled on the right should have been clad with the stone masonry. I don't know if you can see that. Feel free to walk up and have a closer look if need be. But I asked the question, warranted? Not warranted? So I should say, I guess, for those people on the webinar that I didn't do this on the other slides, but there's kind of a spattering of people that are warranted this one, and again, a spattering that did not, and a lot of people are on the fence. So this was not warranted. The flashing is wrapped around that section, which is considered a complete repair. So I think you can see the drastic difference between these two brick cladding. So these pictures show the same area of the home. One when the brick is dry and one when the brick is wet. This was a repair, and the homeowner noticed that when wet, the mortar appeared to be different color than the unrepaired area. This is the same house, believe it or not. So warranted? Not warranted? It wasn't warranted. As it's a condition, it only happens when wet. CPG Article 4.3 about cracks and mortars states that the color texture of repaired areas shall match the existing as closely as possible when dry. Variation in color may be noticeable when wet. So this is right out of a construction performance guideline article. This is the last one in this session. This paving stone is part of the common elements as reported and was reported as damaged and cracked on a year-end audit. The vendor builder didn't repair it because they believe it was damaged by someone dropping something on it. So, warranted? Not warranted? I'm going to try that again. Warranted? Not warranted? Thank you. Again, about an even split there. So during the conciliation, we moved the loose pieces and we found that a piece of wood had been accidentally included in the concrete when it was cast. This caused a corner to pop off and crack. It was very simple for us to discover that, and a reminder that the vendor builders should have taken some time to inspect the deficiency themselves instead of simply assuming it was damage, and this was warranted. I'm going to pass the mic over to Amy, who will lead you through this next session. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Just give me a second to... My name is Amy Lewis, and I am also a part of the stakeholder relations team. And I'm going to walk you through some improvements that have been happening at Tarion over the last several months. I'm sure nobody's heard anything about Tarion in the news recently, right? So we'll walk you through some of that and what to expect. So let's go back a little bit in time and do a little bit of a recap about some of the announcements and some of the initiatives that have come down in the last year. So as you likely all know, in February, the Minister of Government and Consumer Services announced several initiatives to better enhance consumer protection for buyers and owners of newly built homes. So at a high level, that plan would separate the regulator for new home builders from the warranty provider. So the government has requested that Tarion work with the new regulatory body that will come into effect in late 2020. That's the Home Construction Regulatory Authority. And they will be acting as the independent regulator of new home builders and vendors. The government also announced that they would begin an analysis into the feasibility of the multi-provider model. So we know that that process began shortly after the announcement. They consulted widely with the industry, with consumers, and they have committed to being able to make a decision on that and making an announcement before the end of the year. And last, the minister announced new initiatives to better inform and protect purchasers of pre-construction condos. So then a few months down the road, in June, in the Housing Supply Action Plan, the government announced further consumer protection measures. The two announcements that touched on Tarion included adding more proactive risk-based inspections by Tarion during the construction process to ensure that homes are built properly. And when buyers of homes have problems, that Tarion should create or enhance an easy-to-use process to help resolve those disputes quickly and fairly. So let's move along and provide a few details about working with the Home Construction Regulatory Authority. As I said, we're working to support them as they prepare to receive designation from the government and take on the role as the regulator responsible for licensing builders. So together with, we call them HCRA, because Home Construction Regulatory is a little bit of a mouthful. We're working with HCRA and the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services to figure out the planning and all the systems that will be needed to support that. And we know that they've passed a number of milestones along the way. They have an interim CEO, Tim Hadwin. He has a small team that's in place, and they are building the organization now. We're really working together toward the end goal of having them operational in late fall of 2020. So stay tuned for more information. One of the things I can tell you is that we know that engagement of stakeholders is really important for HCRA, so that they are going out to the industry and consumers and hoping to get your feedback as they start developing their plans. I mentioned the initiatives related to condo cancellation, so I'll update you on where we are in regards to the requests made by the government. We've been working with the Condominium Authority of Ontario on developing joint education for potential condo buyers. And what we have done is develop a series of videos to better educate buyers on some of the risks of buying a pre-construction condo. We know that there are a lot of benefits to buying in, especially in early phases of the project, but there are some risks that some buyers may be unaware of, so we want to make sure that they understand those risks. In the spring, we developed an info sheet that would be attached to the addendum of a condo purchase. We consulted very broadly with the industry, with consumers, with lawyers, and later this morning, our General Counsel, Tim Schumacher, is actually going to take you through a technical session related to that information sheet so that you know exactly how to use it and in what circumstances to use it. And last month, we launched a new condo search on the Ontario Builder Directory. So the new search gives prospective buyers of units in pre-construction condos important information about the project and about the builder. It's going to show how many units are planned, where the projects are going to be located, and the person or company building it. And if you're a condo builder, one of the benefits to you is that it will have the marketing name of the project as well, so that somebody will be able to find your project using that name. It's going to show the status of the project, including whether projects have been canceled. And in a situation where a project has been canceled, the builder's reason for the cancellation will be included in that. Search results will include projects from January 1st, 2018 onward. At the same time we launched the condo search, we launched a conviction search to the builder directory, and it provides 10 years worth of data on companies and individuals who have been convicted of illegal building. So that is going to include builders who aren't licensed to sell homes. It's also going to include registered builders who were convicted for failing to enroll homes. So it makes it really easy for someone to search up and see if there's somebody in their community who maybe isn't on the up and up. You can find convictions a number of ways. You can search either by the name of the company or the individual. You can search for convictions during a time span if you think you recall that you heard of a conviction in your area during a certain time. You can also search by the location where either the offense took place or the location where that illegal builder lives. So moving along, we wanted to provide you a little bit of an update on the proactive risk-based inspections that I mentioned earlier. The government asked us to look into adding more proactive risk-based inspections to ensure that homes are built properly. So since this initiative was announced, we've been working on developing an implementation plan to start rolling out late this year. And one of the milestones, the key milestones that we have reached, and I think he's just stepped out of the room, we have recently added a director of warranty services to oversee this program who actually comes from the building official community. So we're very excited about that in the development of the program. So the initial stages where we're at now is really determining which builders are going to be selected and the types of items that are going to be inspected. And one thing that's really important to us, and we know it's important to you, is that these inspections should enhance consumer protection, but they shouldn't add unnecessary red tape, and they shouldn't conflict with the important role that we know building officials play in new home construction. So that is a really important consideration that will be taken into account when we are developing this program, and we hope to have more details for you in the new year. So the last item I wanted to touch on today in terms of improvements at Tarion is the recent release of the Auditor General's report on Tarion. In 2018, the Legislature Standing Committee on Public Accounts passed a motion asking the Auditor General to conduct a value for money audit of Tarion, and last month that report was released. It contains 32 recommendations and several sub-recommendations, and those recommendations are both to Tarion and to the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. We are first and foremost a consumer protection agency, and we acknowledge the transparency and the accountability that this type of report brings. We've accepted all of the Auditor General's recommendations and are now working toward their implementation. If you haven't read the report yet, you can access it for yourself online, and I would suggest that you do read it and see for yourselves the type of recommendations that are in the report. Some of them are broad. They touch on regulation and licensing of builders. On those, we will be working with HICRA. Some are operational. Some relate to the warranty itself and the warranty process. So just to give you an example of a couple recommendations that will impact you and your business. One is around the pre-delivery inspection and the delivery of the homeowner information package, and that's to better inform buyers of the importance of the pre-delivery inspection. There are also recommendations related to the customer service standards that would see changes like the elimination of the 30-day form, reduce the builder repair period, and allow homeowners to add items to forms after they've been submitted. So our next steps on this is to create an implementation plan in terms of prioritizing the recommendations and how we are going to go about tackling them. And we expect to have more information for you in the new year. And I'm going to ask Tim Schumacher, our Vice President and General Counsel, to come up and walk you through the information sheet for pre-construction condos. For all of you here, and as a reminder for those of you on the webcast as well, when we are done the technical session on the info sheet, we will hold a question and answer session. For those of you who are on the webcast, you received a link that you can send questions through, or if you can't easily access that link, you can email stakeholderrelations@tarion.com. If you are in the room and you have questions, please raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone so we can make sure that everybody who's watching from home or their office can hear your questions as well.
Thanks, Amy, and good morning to everyone. I also want to join in thanking you for coming out today. This is the technical session. Not sure how technical it is, but I hope that I can shed some light on how what the condominium information sheet is all about, and when to use it and when not to use it. My name is Tim Schumacher. As has been mentioned, I'm General Counsel with Tarion, and have been involved with the ministry in developing this new information sheet. And I guess what we'd like to start off by saying is, as mentioned, it was the Minister of Government and Consumer Services who announced in February several new initiatives to strengthen protection for buyers of pre-construction condominiums. This, of course, was in part, at least in part, driven by all of the media attention for various condo cancellations. Amy has described some of the other measures, including advancements to the OBD, that sort of thing. But this was another piece of the puzzle, which was the idea of creating an additional information sheet that would be attached to pre-construction agreements of purchase and sale to provide an extra measure of disclosure on a number of issues. And as part of that consumer protection initiative, we spent considerable time consulting with the industry, consulting with the public, a great deal of time with the ministry, talking about what things should or should not go into this kind of a form, how it should work, and the document that I'm about to explain sort of shows you where we've landed. And so after receiving public input, Tarion announced that the new pre-construction condominium information sheet would be brought forward on October 23 of this year. By now, all of the registered vendors and builders with condominium projects should have received a registrar's advisory. I hope that that is something that rings a bell for some of you. You'll have received it in the mail. Describes many of the aspects of this new initiative. If you are coming in to create a new condominium project at this point to get registered as a vendor for a condo or a builder, there will be additional terms and conditions that are associated with that registration that relate directly to this matter, really emphasizing a number of the things that are already in the document and the way in which it should be used. The condominium information sheet is something, it's a document which it's about 2 pages long, and the intention is to attach it to the very front of an agreement of purchase and sale. Now, you'll all be aware of the Tarion Addendum, which is another supplement to the agreement of purchase and sale. The same requirement that it be right up front does not exist, and sometimes you see it as, Schedule K to the agreement of purchase and sale, and to some extent gets lost. The idea was to make sure that that doesn't happen with this document, that these are key points that we want to bring to the attention of the homeowners right out of the gate, and hence the requirement that it be at the front of the agreement of purchase and sale. Make sure that this is moving ahead. Yeah, too far. The information sheet, it is hoped, will help Ontario condo buyers make better informed decisions and that will highlight key potential risks associated with pre-construction condominiums. As I said, it's attached at the front of the agreement, so it should come to their attention in a more in-your-face way. And there are very, very important cautions, and when you see it, if you have not seen it, it is available on our website. There's a template, and I'll talk in a moment about how we're making a Word version available as well. But as far as content, it's pretty easy to find the copy of it on our website right now. But the sort of various categories of the new information that will be included in the nature of cautions and disclosure for homeowners are, first of all, a very bold statement that this is a pre-construction condominium. It comes with risks, and this project may never be completed. Telling them right from the outset, there's no guarantee that this is going to get completed. Another important disclosure item, although early termination conditions are in the addendum as well, what this does is that it, in almost a summary fashion, points out what the early termination conditions that are in the addendum will be. And so if you've got an early termination condition about sales threshold, or about getting development approvals, or about satisfactory financing, it's all there, 1, 2, 3, and again, pretty much in your face as far as the homeowners go, so that they understand some of the risks that are associated with it. It also speaks to another matter that's already in the addendum, but again, brings it forward in a summary fashion, and that relates to the status of the project. For example, is a project at the point where it has the appropriate zoning approvals, is a big point. A new item, which again sort of came out of the headlines in the news about concerns about whether or not there are title restrictions on projects that could prevent it from being completed. There is now a provision which requires disclosure as to whether or not there are title restrictions on the project which themselves could prevent completion of the project. Some just information points which have always been there, for example, is again reminding homeowners that they do have a 10-day cooling off period. That is not something that Tarion does, but it is something under the Condominium Act. But all of this sort of fits together because when you get your agreement of purchase and sale as a home buyer, you're having to look at, this new information sheet, the addendum, the agreement of purchase and sale, disclosure statement, a lot of information to take in, and that 10-day cooling off period is very, very important to them, truly getting a grasp of what the risks might be. And of course, it also, as does the addendum, indicates the most likely or the then expected date that the purchaser can take occupancy. One more thing that, again, I would say, I believe there's a line in the addendum for this, but again, just to put it up front, in the first 2 pages is an admonition that every home buyer should take their agreement of purchase and sale and the ancillary documents and get them reviewed by a lawyer, and not just any lawyer, a lawyer who knows condominium transactions and can understand the vagaries that go with that kind of a transaction, because it is a specialized area. And we believe that by doing so, again, they should be better informed about the risks associated with pre-construction condominiums. And while it's been acknowledged there are always risks associated with buying something that hasn't yet been built, we think that some of these changes will actually help builders make more informed choices and understand that there are risks associated with this kind of a product. The next question is, or the thing that we want to point out is that this document, if you want to get your copy of it, it is on Terion's website. It is on BuilderLink. It will have a template stamp on it for the time being, because we don't want people using those forms for their agreements of purchase and sale. A Word version of the document will be coming out very shortly. So where can you get it? You're on the website. There are links to various news releases, I believe, on the website. And if you're signed up for Breaking Ground, you can also receive it through that mechanism. So this is a technical session, so let's talk about using the new information sheet. The first thing to remember is that this must be used with every agreement of purchase and sale for a new condominium, a residential condominium unit, in a standard condominium and in a standard phased condominium. While the information will apply, the sheet will apply to most condominium projects, it specifically at this stage, at least anyway, does not apply to leasehold condominiums. It does not apply to common element condominiums, which of course makes sense anyway, because common element condominiums don't actually have residential units in and of themselves, but also does not apply to vacant land condominiums, certainly not at this stage. As I mentioned, our expectation is that the document will be placed at the front of the agreement of purchase and sale, where we hope that it will come to the attention of purchasers and their lawyers. But it is important to note that we recognize that sometimes mistakes are made, and if it's not attached at the front of the agreement of purchase and sale, it's not our intention to suggest that that somehow makes the whole agreement of purchase and sale not valid. That's not the way we see this. If builders are being found to be not including it at the front of the agreement of purchase and sale, we consider that a licensing issue, where we will bring people in, talk to them, and remind them that their responsibility is to put it at the front of the agreement of purchase and sale. That's not to say that there's no consequence for ignoring that requirement. There may very well be. Just a reminder again, for anyone who has not received the registrar's advisory, is something that if you ask, we can send it to you. Pretty sure that it's right on the landing page on Terion's website right now, and it too points out that there are licensing requirements for not complying with this new information sheet. Next question that comes up has to do with transition rules. Since launching the new information sheet, We've received several questions about the transition rules, and we want to try and be as clear as we can about that. We are adopting the transition rules that are essentially applied to when the addendums were introduced. And basically is that the information sheet is to be included with all agreements of purchase and sale for new projects or phases of projects as of January 1st, 2020. But specifically, and these words are important, the requirement applies to condominium projects where the first arm's length agreement of purchase and sale for the project or the phase of the project is entered into in good faith on or after that date. So agreements of purchase and sale that are sort of pulled together with your brother-in-law and is basically just an attempt to sort of get around the transition rules will not count to grandfather the project. There's also a couple of other instances where that are basically subsets of this transition rule, and they are, for example, if you do have some agreements of purchase and sale that are signed before January 1, and those agreements, and say there's 3 of them, and after January 1, all 3 of those get canceled for whatever reason, by mutual agreement, whatever, you're now back in a situation in which you have a project which is going to market yet again. That will be treated as a project that would be covered because your first arm's length agreement of purchase and sale entered in good faith will be post-January 2020. The other subcategory of the transition rules relates to phased condominiums. You may have the initial condominium will be grandfathered because agreements of purchase and sale were entered into before the new year. But when you get to the second phase of that project, it's treated separately, and if there's no agreement of purchase and sale before Jan 1, 2020 for that next phase will be covered by this requirement, and you do need to attach the information sheet to the agreements of purchase and sale for that next phase. Not the first phase, which was grandfathered, but the second phase. And more generally, this question came up, is this in any way somehow retroactive? The idea is that it is not retroactive, that if you've got a project where you've got 10, 20, 30, 50 agreements of purchase and sale signed for a project before Jan 1, 2020, it's not like you have to go back and amend all of those and add this information sheet. You do not. That project or that phase of a project has been grandfathered, and for the balance of that particular project, you do not. You can stay consistent that there was no information sheet needed for that particular project or phase of a project. And in this regard, if you have any questions or comments or concerns about whether or not you should or should be adding the information sheet, we strongly suggest that you give us a call here, contact people here, and they can help you with that answer. Amy, is there a particular person to whom they should direct that call? Is it Bob Thorburn?
Actually, you can talk to your stakeholder relations representative,
Okay.
and if you aren't sure who your stakeholder relations representative is, you can email stakeholderrelations@tarion.com, and we can make sure to connect you.
Okay. And just very quickly, once we do, as I've said, we're working on a Word document that will be made available. There's always a danger in putting out a document that can be manipulated, so we need to make sure that there are rules around using a Word document. And basically what we're saying is that when you're using the word copy, there's a number of things that you have to remember. For example, you're not entitled to change the text, the standard text of the information sheet. You can't sort of change the wording because you'd like it to say something different. It is a document that you're required to put out there in the exact language that's there. There will be blanks and information that you need to insert, and that is fine, but don't change the standard text. The other thing is that the information sheet needs to be retained as a single contiguous document. It's only 2 pages long, but it is not acceptable to break it up and take the clauses and spread them throughout the agreement of purchase and sale. It needs to stay together. The very same rule applies to the addendum. Keep it together. It's supposed to be a recognizable document that needs to stay together. My apologies. I hope you heard everything I said in the last half hour. And we can start over again. And ultimately, from a licensing point of view, what you do or don't do correctly or incorrectly with this document will remain your responsibility. And so it's important to understand the rules that apply to the use of this information sheet. And I guess I should just mention finally that from time to time it is possible that we're going to be updating this form. If so, we of course will post the new versions on our system. We would probably send out information that would be in breaking ground, that sort of thing. But ultimately, it's your responsibility to make sure that you are working with the most recent version of this document. And if I remember correctly, there is sort of a footer that tells you what version of the document you have at any given time. And you can always check on our website to find out what is the most recent version. And you can obtain either a template copy of that or a Word version of that document. We hope to have the Word document out, I think, within the next couple of weeks. Is that right, Amy? She's looking back at me going, don't you know? That is our hope. Certainly be sometime in December before Jan 1 comes around. And if anyone, for any reason, although I don't think in my experience I've ever seen this, needs a French version of this document, come and talk to us and we may be able to help you with that as well. And with that, I'm going to simply open it up to questions.
So Tim, I'll get you to stay up here in case we have questions about this. I think we did have a question that came in from the webcast. Just a reminder, if you have a question from the floor, please raise your hand so that we can get you the microphone. So anybody who is watching us online can hear your question. If your question is of a file-specific nature, I would ask you to connect with somebody in the room when we take a break. If you're watching via webcast and you have a file-specific question or a general question not necessarily related to this, we do have a little bit of time constraints, so you can connect with your stakeholder relations representative, or you can email us at stakeholderrelations@tarion.com. Sharon, did we have a question, any questions that came in from the webcast?
We do have one. It says, if a project starts prior to January 1st, 2020, and the agreements have been entered in good faith prior to January 1st, 2020, which have not been canceled, I confirm that no information sheet needs to be attached as there is no retroactivity. However, there are still units to this project which still have to be sold after January 1st. Is the requirement of the information sheet in effect for those remaining agreements? Get all back.
If there are basically bona fide agreements of purchase and sale signed for that project before January 1, then that essentially grandfathers the whole of the project. And so if you've got 10 signed before the end of the year and 90 more to go after, the 90 do not have to have the information sheet attached to it.
Thanks.
Now, I should say it's always open to you to add it as an information sheet, because I'll be, in many ways, this is designed as a consumer protection kind of measure, but if you look at it from the builder point of view, there's certainly some advantages to having a home buyer who has, better understands what they're getting into and is less likely to complain that they didn't know what they were getting into if all of this information was right there and very clear to them. So doing it voluntarily may well be to your own advantage as well.
Do we have any questions from the floor? Anyone in the room? No? Any other questions from the webcast?
No.
Okay, so it is 10:25. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? And for those of you who are joining us by webcast or those who are going to exit the room for 5 minutes, we will come back at 10:30.
Bob.